What's up, Earthrockers? So we're Shovatar here, back again to talk again about Castlevania Bloodlines. This time I'm going to be talking about Eric Alucard, the other playable character in the game. This is Expert Mode again. This is No Death again. This is Single Segment again. It's been a week, actually, since I recorded my last Bloodlines commentary, so I'm going to try... I don't remember exactly everything I said, so I'm going to try not to repeat myself, and the way I'm going to try not to do that is by trying to focus mostly on talking about Eric himself and, like, basically what the differences are between he and John and when the differences are and are not relevant. The biggest difference, well, I should say the most apparent difference that you can already see probably is that he has a spear instead of a whip. You don't really need to have a PhD to figure that out. But the consequence of this is that his attacks have longer range than John's do. He also has some different capabilities in terms of his like directional attacks. John can only whip left and right when he's on the ground, and then when he jumps in midair, he can do like an upwards diagonal swing. Eric can do an upwards diagonal stab from the floor, and also can do just like a straight upward stab. But the most important thing about Eric, the most interesting thing, is what I just demonstrated right there, which is that he has like a special like super jump he can do, where he can jump up really high into the air. Now, this isn't the kind of thing that's like useful in normal gameplay usually, because it takes a little bit of like a wind up to do. Or I should say, it's not the kind of thing that's like useful in combat necessarily, because it takes a little bit of like a charge up to do. You have to duck and then like charge up the jump, then do the jump. But in terms of navigating the levels, that's like what it's there for. So in that sense, Eric is kind of like Grant and Alucard from Dracula's Curse, in that the thing that sets him apart from the other playable characters, that he has extra ways of getting around the game. And it's really kind of up to you as a player to take full advantage of the potential of this ability through sort of paying attention to the levels and to the level design, and looking for spots where you can take advantage of this ability that he has. This was something that the first time I went through the game, I really never did. I basically never used the super jump for any kind of like navigation, and I was thinking of Eric more of like as a pure like combat trade-off character, where it's like he trades longer range for less damage. Eric doesn't do as much damage as John does, but he has longer range. But that's really only like the beginning of his what makes his character interesting. The core of Eric Alucard as a character, in my opinion, is that super jump, and is the ways that you can use that to like navigate the levels differently, and make things a lot easier for yourself if you're just willing to put in a little bit of time to think about the levels that you're in and the environments that you're in. So that was what was really rewarding, actually, about doing this, even though generally I actually don't like playing as Eric as much as I like playing as John, because the lower damage that Eric has, while probably a necessary balancing factor given how strong it is necessary. He would be the most overpowered thing in the world. Well, except for Rondo of Blood Maria, if he didn't do less damage than John. But it's very hard for me to enjoy playing as characters who do like less damage, like just like flat out less damage per attack. Partially because I just become used to like bosses taking a certain number of hits, and partially just because like it slows the pace of the game down. Even though like a full Eric run of the game is probably always going to be faster than a John run, because the super jump gives you more options for moving around. And he can skip like huge chunks of the game. Well, I shouldn't say huge, but like large chunks of certain rooms that John would have to actually navigate. So even though the game itself doesn't take as long to complete when you play as Eric, the pacing of the individual combat encounters is of course slower, because his attack speed, I'm fairly sure, is the same. It's just the range is longer and the damage is lower. So I've said in the past, I don't know if I've said it on this channel before, but I think I've said it about, like in real life, about other games. It's extremely hard to make doing less damage, like, it's very hard to balance that downside. Like, if you give a player two choices, and one of the choices is you're going to do less damage than you did before, you really need to make that choice have something really, really significant about it in order to balance it out. And I think Eric actually does a really good job of accomplishing that. Partially because, like I said, the fact that he can move through the levels in a different way, and in a way that's more fast, does mitigate like the pacing issues, because you spend more time attacking enemies but you don't spend as much time like navigating the levels. I think I've heard some people say that Eric is like the game's easy mode. I've heard people say that about Maria and Rondo. I think that's definitely true of Maria and Rondo, but to be honest, like, even though the longer range does mean you don't have to worry as much about your positioning, and even though the super jump lets you skip certain like tricky areas of the game, it's really not that much easier on the card. Like, John and Eric are probably like the best balanced playable characters in any of these games. Just one more thing to add on to the many things that Bloodlines does completely right, or like the basically the mistakes that Bloodlines doesn't make. That's the thing that struck me about Bloodlines, even in the first set of videos I did about it, was like, wow, I actually can't find any problems in this game with like the way that it plays. I guess this part's a little bit like, I don't know. Ooh, see, that was really bad. I should have just used a super attack there, because I think that was maybe that was my plan? No, I must have expected to kill that Minotaur on the second stab and been like ready for the ghost, because I know I practiced this area, and I know a big central component of my practice of this area had to do with like dealing with the ghosts when they showed up, and I think I was expecting that Minotaur to be dead by the time the ghost became relevant, but that didn't happen, and I didn't think fast enough on my feet to realize that I should have just used the super attack. I guess that is the one thing about Bloodlines that's a little bit annoying, is that like the nature of the final weapon upgrades and like the super attack is a little bit hard to plan for, because it seems like you can get that last upgrade whenever, and then you can kind of like lose it whenever, like when you don't mean to. It's not like item crashes in Rondo and Dracula X, like those are things you can plan around, because you're not going to randomly lose your sub-weapon in those games. So it makes hearts more of an interesting resource consistently. I do want to mention something about this part right here that I don't think I mentioned in my first video, and I remember this, is that these guys, not this second guy, but that first guy is actually really fucking annoying to fight, because I never figured out, like, when he jumps, which he does way more often than this guy does, I never figured out, like, what he was jumping at, or, like, where to move or how to move in order to avoid those jumps. It just seemed like he would jump, like, wherever he felt like, and so I had a very small window of time to react. Which is my biggest weakness as a player, is the fact that my reaction time is actually not good. And it should say something, honestly, about these retro games in general, that I'm even able to, like, with my, like, bad reaction time and how bad I am at, like, thinking on my feet. Oh, sorry, I have the window open. It's a weekday, so I didn't think people would be making that much noise. What was it saying? So much of the Castlevania series, anyway, is just about, like, it's about learning. You don't really have to make a lot of, like, split-second, like, hair-trigger instinct decisions in order to beat them. Even though they are very... Even, like, especially with a game like Bloodlines, it's very, like, action-oriented, but... I guess what I'm saying is, like, don't be intimidated if you're, like... If you're the kind of person who thinks you're bad at video games, and you're worried because these games have a reputation of difficulty, like... Don't be, because they're really not. I don't want to say they're not that hard, because that sounds arrogant, but like anybody can play any of these games and like have. There's no such thing really as a game that's too hard, in my opinion. Unless, I mean, there are exceptions, obviously, because there are some games that are like made to be too hard, where they're just basically trying to troll you. That's not what these games are. I've heard people say that about Dracula's Curse, that it's a game that just tries to troll you, but I think that those people are not engaging with the game correctly. I just don't think that, like... I think that, like, difficulty is not... Difficulty is not the same thing as, like, impossibility, I guess is what I'm saying. I don't know, I mean, I guess this is just... I find overcoming challenges fun. That's why I'm doing all this. I kind of went off on a tangent there. I don't remember what my point was exactly. Oh yeah, I was saying that even though I'm like even though I'm bad at video games, like I still like did all this. I guess this is my very stilted, awkward way of trying to be encouraging. Because, like, I had never done anything like this before, before last year. And I ended up having a blast, so... Anybody out there, if you're the kind of person who's, like, really sick of, like, the modern video game landscape, and it's, like, all my favorite franchises, like, their new entries are full of, like DLC, like, gacha mechanic nonsense... I said it before and I'll say it again, there's 40 years of video game history you can go back to. There are enough games exist right now for you to spend the entire rest of your life playing them and not get to them all, you know what I mean? And I mean, like, I'm talking about the good ones, you know what I mean? Like, I will go to my grave without having played certain games that are really good that I want to play. So, it's not like, I think the idea that, like, you need to play the new games is a fallacy. And that's not like a revolutionary statement or anything. I'm just like, I just see people who lament over the state of modern video games, and it's like, why do you even need them? You know what I mean? See this boss. I was so bad at this boss. I think I took damage every single time I fought this boss. I know this was the guy that knocked the lightning whip off of me in my No Death Expert John run, because I don't know, like, you need to stay I guess you don't really need to stay close to him to damage him, and Eric gives a particular amount of leeway in that variety. I guess if I really wanted to, I could have just sat, like, on the fucking left edge of the screen, hoarded up a bunch of gems, and done nothing but shot, like, up C projectile axes at him. Because every sub-weapon in Bloodlines, I know I said this in the other video, but I'll reiterate it just to be clear. Every sub-weapon in Bloodlines has two different, like, attacking modes. There are 3 sub-weapons, but really there's, like, but because each sub-weapon has 2 different, like, modes of potential attack, there's kind of, like, every sub-weapon is really 2 sub-weapons. And the way that works is that there's, you just hit the sub-weapon button to use the regular, to, like, activate the regular use of the sub-weapon. And then if you hit up and the sub-weapon button, you do, like, a variant of it that does something different, that gives you some different mode of coverage, and that costs, but that costs more gems to use. Which is interesting, but I never felt like I really figured out the full potential of that aspect of the game. And that's the thing about Bloodlines that really makes it, like, this is when I know a game is really good, when I feel like I could play it right now, and I could still, like, find something interesting to do in it that I haven't done before, or, like, explore something new, or try out something new. Like, I could boot this game up right now and play it, and I would have a good time, guaranteed. This is an Eric-only route. Right here, John has to go forward and then use the whip swing to get across a gap. Eric uses a super jump to go up here. I think it takes him right to the... Yes, it does. Okay. You might think that using the up spear stab might be better for fighting that guy, but actually, I found that just throwing the axe was better because you can duck right after you throw the axe, or you can duck and throw the axe at the same time, because the sub-weapon in this game, like in Super Castlevania 4, is just one button press. You don't have to press up and then sub-weapon. Or up and then attack to use a sub-weapon. And that's important because when that Bone Serpent mini-boss is, like, flailing around, if you're just standing there, sometimes he can, like, clip the top of your head. Crouching is a really important thing to do in these games, and it's something that I also feel like I never fully took advantage of, because it just, like, This is gonna sound really common sense, but it makes you smaller. Like, it makes you harder to hit. You can dodge things when you crouch that you wouldn't be able to otherwise, and it's something that I never really like thought about that much because when I play these games, I generally tend to think about like moving forward and like progressing, and obviously you can't do that while you're ducking, except in Super Castlevania 4, I guess, where you can duck walk. Speaking of ducking, that's another little quirk of Eric that I actually really don't like, is the fact that when Eric ducks and attacks, he does that like rapid fire stab thing, where I think I would like it better if he just did his regular attack when he ducked. I don't know why that... I knew that bat was there. Like, I've practiced this level a lot because it's one of the levels in Bloodlines where you get no meat. So you really need to know this level when you go in. So, like, I'm sure I knew that bat was there. I don't know why I didn't react to it. I think that bat might be like an expert mode only thing, so maybe that's why I had a brain freeze and wasn't expecting it. I don't really remember. That's what's funny about, like, I actually don't... So much of the most recent times that I've played Bloodlines have been on expert mode. I kind of, like, don't remember... I remember some of what is and isn't expert mode, but then other things I just forget. And that's what's interesting, is that I kind of wondered, when I was coming back to this game, if, what the fuck, man? That was not what was supposed to happen. I was expecting an axe to hit that gargoyle at some point, and then it didn't get hit by it, and I don't know what exactly went wrong there. I do know that there was a gargoyle that stayed alive when I expected it to die, and that's why it eventually got to me, but I don't know how... I don't know what mistake I made there exactly. I'd have to go back and look at it again. I'm sorry, I realize that's not a very informative commentary, but sometimes I don't always go back and, like... I kind of go back and forth between, like, wanting to... Okay, well, actually, I'm going to stop for a second. Eric shits all over this boss, because you can... John can kind of do the same thing as Eric does, but with him it's like you have to use the axe more, you have to like jump and do a diagonal whip if you want to like intercept it in the same way. Eric, if I had the super spear still, if I hadn't lost it, then this would be... it would be a proper demonstration of Eric's capabilities. Here instead you're seeing more of like a balanced version of what that boss fight is like on Eric, where I am hitting it more, but I'm doing less damage, so ultimately that doesn't... It's not as... It doesn't look like it's that much easier than fighting the thing on John, but it is. Because you don't have to worry about, like, axe trajectory timing, you don't have to worry about, like, your gems. Not that you would anyway, I guess. I don't know. You're not dependent on a sub-weapon, I guess, is what's important to note about that. Level 4. So level 4 is a place where... this is like, I would say, on expert mode, this is like the second hardest level in the game. It's only topped by a level 6. Eric doesn't really make it any easier, in my opinion. He makes one part easier, but there are elements of that stage on expert mode that kind of blunt his advantage. I don't know. Eric. I said that these characters are very well balanced, but I still feel like Eric is not like... I feel like there's just something missing. He needs like a little bit something more. Maybe the fact that he's not Maybe this is a sign of good design. The fact that my feelings about I lost my train of thought. Sorry, I'm trying to work out an opinion on the fly. Usually I come into these videos and I already know what I think, and I just have to communicate it. But here I'm kind of like second guessing myself. That's what I'm trying to say about the whole Eric Alucard balance thing. It's fine. It's fine. Because this is actually the stage where he shines. Because here, he can do that. He can just like stab straight up to hit enemies without having to worry about like risking a jump. And the reason I say risking a jump is because sometimes trying to like jump up and hit enemies that are right above you means you'll like barely clip their feet through the floor, which I think is going to actually happen towards the end of the stage. I know I don't get out of this stage with the Super Spear, which is very upsetting because I would have liked to have had it for the rest of this level in particular. Yeah, so the thing is that I know there's a skeleton up there, but I'm not sure when that's exactly what I'm talking about. I knew he was up there, but I didn't know where he was exactly, and I didn't want to just super jump up there because I was afraid that I was going to knock into him, so I wanted to try to kill him before doing any kind of like super jump. That jump was actually me trying to find out where he was, but it turns out he was right above me and I just jumped right into him. So that's pretty upsetting. This is another issue with like the axe, actually, is the fact that John with the axe basically has all of Alucard's like directional vertical attack advantages, and there's never really any like as much as I love Bloodlines, I do think that the sub-weapons are very badly balanced. I don't think there's really ever any reason to use anything besides the axe in Bloodlines pretty much ever. I can think of one or two niche uses for the boomerang. I don't think I can think of any for the Holy Water. The Holy Water has like a very visually impressive like alternate fire, but I don't know. I don't know if that matters. I hate this part. I guess if there's one thing about Bloodlines that I would have to criticize, I don't like this room at all. I don't like environmental hazards that make you fucking sit there and wait. So, and that's kind of exactly what this is. So, I don't like this, but this is literally one room out of the whole game. What is happening here? Oh, I see what I'm doing. This is actually smart. Because if I think if I jump on that platform that skeleton is on, then, well, for one thing, obviously I'm in danger of getting hit, but for another thing, yeah, the bats start spawning. So if I stand on that little ledge down there, then I can start hitting him before the bats spawn, which is important. When I got to this part in my successful no-death expert clear on John, I had the lightning whip, which meant that I had the magic like super attack. This is an example. This is more of like what I would have done if I didn't have that. It would have been getting into positions where I can throw an axe at the skeletons one at a time, and then reserving my regular attack for the bats, and sort of using both weapons in that way. And also just kind of being aware of the timing on the bats, and having a plan for, like, what am I going to do when they show up? Am I going to try to attack them, or am I going to jump over them? That's kind of something you should have in your mind ahead of time, so you don't have to make, like, a split-second decision. Like, because that whole stage is probably the hardest, is like the second hardest stage in the entire game. I'd say the only stage that's harder is, maybe like 6-3, maybe? 6-3 is just more like disorienting, kind of. You'll see it when we get there. If you've watched the other videos, it's the upside down room. But 4-9 is really the one that... Oh, okay. Interesting. That was actually the one combat application of the super jump I found, was jumping up into the sky to avoid that one particular attack that this clockwork golem does. The problem is I just didn't, like, do it right. I just didn't hit the button when I was supposed to. Am I going to do it right this time? Okay, good. I don't actually know. I think what you're supposed to do... I don't know what you're supposed to do when he does that, to be honest. Because I feel like... I can't remember. Because I know I had a way to dodge that attack on John, and John can't super jump, but I don't remember what it was. Oh, come on. Alright. Die. Die, you fucker! Oh my god. There we go. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Eric has longer range, but like... I don't know. I guess if I played the character more, I would have gotten a better handle on where that line was. Like, what that distance is that Eric can hit enemies from, but that John can't. Because this didn't... I don't think this took me very long. Partially because I practiced a lot, because I'd played the game before, so I knew which parts were liable to be problematic. And partially because I just had, like, a background of experience with the game already, so I knew how to handle some of the tougher spots. And that's partially the reason why, the only reason why I decided to do this whole, like, revisiting thing anyway, is because, like, I already had this residual knowledge and experience just sitting in the back of my head. I knew it wouldn't be that hard. Although some things turned out to be pretty fucking hard anyway, which I'll get to later in the series. But this wasn't that bad. And this was actually really satisfying. Because like I said in my previous Bloodlines video, like, this was the kind of thing that I'd always thought of as, no death expert just seemed, like, not feasible to me, at first. And then, after playing through the rest of the series, I came back to it, and I was like, oh, actually, this is doable. And I'm sure I've made this point already, but I'll make this point again. Like, honestly, playing the DS trilogy, I'm gonna say, yeah, I'd say playing the DS trilogy made me, like, way better at these games. Because honestly, like, especially, like, going for, like, no death boss, like, or no damage boss rushes, in the DS trilogy, like, that was really, really important, because honestly, the combat in those games is way more complicated and way more difficult than anything you will find in classic Castlevania. If you're giving yourself the stipulation of, like, don't take damage. Because you have so many more tools in those games, so in order to compensate, the combat is made so much more complicated. In classic Castlevania, it's still difficult, it's still engaging, it's still fast-paced, but it's simpler by necessity. This is an interesting decision, but a smart one. Because that's exactly what I didn't do in my John no-death run, and which I should have done, which was... Because I came into that room with the lightning whip, the magic super attack in my John run, and then I just, like, didn't use it, and then I, like, couldn't avoid the ghosts, and of course it hit me. Here, I come into the fucking room with, like, a million gems, and it's like, I have this perfect tool to solve this problem that otherwise can't be solved, so I just used the tool to solve the problem. Instead of, like, I'm worried about my gem supply, but, like, that room is exactly what the magic super attack is, like, for. Same with this part, honestly. This is Bloodlines' Igor Gauntlet. And it's actually really tough because these enemies, exactly that reason. The fast pace of Bloodlines means that the game wants you to react very quickly to these things, and also the weird little, like, monster creatures that they drop. They get dropped really fast because they're so close to the floor. Like, look at how high up the floor is. If you pull up footage from, like, Castlevania 1 or Castlevania 3 of the Igor Gauntlet, like, there's so much more time that the Hunchbacks spend in the air on the way from the flying thing carrying them before hitting the ground. But there, in that stage of level 5, they drop and they hit the floor almost instantly. So you can't just like intercept all of them and then not worry about them. You do have to actually react. And that route, that is like an Eric-only route. I guess because the idea is maybe like the longer range on the spear is supposed to mitigate some of the issues that you would encounter on that part, but I don't think it's that big of a help. And also another thing about that upper route is that taking that upper route on Eric means that level 5, like level 3, is a no healing level. The only meat in level 5 is on the John route, so you really have to learn, you really have to practice. I should mention that, like, to compensate for these no meat, no healing levels, that the max health you have in Bloodlines is 20 instead of 16, which is the case in C1 and C3 and Chronicles and a lot of the other harder classic Castlevania games, but again, balancing that out, the emphasis on combat and on action is a lot higher in Bloodlines, so you have more health, but you're also liable to take more damage. And I don't know how much damage exactly everything does in Bloodlines. I know that environmental hazards do like a ton of damage if they don't kill you. Like those rotating blade things that I was complaining about back in 4.8, if one of those things hits you, I'm pretty sure they do like 12 damage. They do like more than half your health, so you really don't want to get hit by that. This boss gave me so much trouble the first time I played the game, but like, I don't know why it didn't occur to me. I think I don't know what the issue was. I think I wanted to figure out a way to clear that mini-boss without using a sub-weapon in case I got here with, like, the super weapon and the super magic attack, and I wanted to be able to clear it only using the spear. So that involves, like, clearing all that shit out without throwing an axe is a lot harder, so I think that's part of what my issue was with that during practice. But then if you get there without the magic spear and without the magic attack, it's just a simple matter of using the axe. That is another thing that's harder on expert mode. On expert mode, the statue shoots out like one extra glowing ball per attack. It's like 4 per thing instead of 3. So this boss is a perfect example of like the paradox of Eric Alucard, where when I fought this boss on John, I was really good at, like, keeping it pinned in the corner, because I could just jump and do upward diagonal whipping, but here it's like, I have to either, like, commit to this platform and keep, like, inching forward with the upward diagonal spear thrusts, or, like, sit down on the floor and, like, barely clip it with upward spear thrusts, or, like, throw axes at it. It's weird. Eric is supposed to have a wider range, or a longer range of influence, a longer range of attack, but it's also, like, weirdly restrictive in parts. And I kind of don't like the whole, like, forward, upward, diagonal attack thing anyway, because like I mentioned in my Super Castlevania 4 video, like, mechanically the way you execute that is forward and up and the attack button. So if you want to do it multiple times, which you usually do, you're forced to, like, you have to, like, stutter step forward between attacks unless you're, like, it just adds another layer of mechanical complexity if you want to, like, do that shit. If you want to attack more than once while also staying in place. It's pretty hard to do, in my opinion. Or I should say it's just one extra thing you have to learn how to do, when I'd prefer not to have to worry about it. I picked up the axe because I was used to practicing this part with the axe, and kind of the opposite of the problem that I mentioned before, where I wanted to make sure I knew how to clear the statue if I didn't have a sub-weapon. I also, like, I basically practiced for the entirety of level 6 under the assumption that I wouldn't have the super spear and that I would have the axe sub-weapon, because it honestly just makes everything a lot easier. And that's what's frustrating about this whole mechanic in Bloodlines, is that, like, it would be really nice if there was some way to swap back and forth between the sub-weapon that you want to have, that was really good, and the magic attack, like, at will, but you can't. Because sometimes you don't want a fucking super magic attack, sometimes you just want a fucking regular sub-weapon, like right here. So that's kind of frustrating. It's kind of like... I should explain why I want sub-weapons. It's because this whole hallway, these robots keep showing up, but you hear them before you see them. If you wait until you see them to react to their presence and then, like, attack them, then that's pretty hard for someone like me. So my plan basically is as soon as I hear their footsteps approaching, I sub-weapon right in front of me, and then I turn around and attack, and that will always get them. I don't have to worry about waiting until I see what direction they're coming from. That sequence always covers both directions. Now let's see how I lose the super attack here. I wonder if it's going to be the golem again. Or if it's going to be like the clockwork monster. Maybe it's going to be death? Well, I guess I'll find out. I don't actually remember. Here, just like with John, I trigger the death card boss fights from easiest to hardest, so that way I maximize my chances of retaining the super spear for as long as possible. I guess easiest to hardest, I mean like easiest to no damage versus hardest to no damage. This guy is fucking incredibly easy on the card. He has less health than ever before, and now I am coming in with a super spear, so he just gets melted. Fucking massacre. I remember really not liking this boss fight when I first played the game, because like the 3D spinning effect kind of like messed with my head. I have a feeling I'm going to take damage here. I think that's what happens. Because this boss is 100% just about like positioning and just about like finding the spot where you can hit him but he can't hit you. So it's a matter of precise reaction and location, and I feel like that's the kind of thing where I'm liable to like spill my spaghetti and like fuck up when I really shouldn't, but I guess it's fine. That's why I'm throwing an axe instead of trying to jump and attack, because I know that I have a tendency to just like completely shit the bed when it comes to like precision placement and attacking like that. It's just very easy to miscalculate and get like a little bit too close and get clipped. Alright, now I'm probably gonna get hit. Yeah, like, Eric has longer range, but I don't really find myself playing this fight any differently than I do on John. I feel like I'm still taking the same, like, fundamental risks and making the same... Like, what's, like, okay, what was that, man? Where was I supposed to go there? I guess I was supposed to try to do that, like, try to find some gap between the rocks, but, like, that's so annoying. Like, I kind of want to go back and, like, watch that in slow motion and see, like, where the correct position was, because I feel like it was either like stand there and get hit, or try to run to the left and get clipped by a rock, or run to the right and run into the golem. I feel like I had no good like options there. That's really frustrating, actually. Goddamn, see, I thought I was going to get hit there, but I thought it was going to be like my fault. That didn't look like it was my fault. I don't know what that was. I mean, I'm sure it was my fault. I'm sure there was a solution in there somewhere, but I don't know. I couldn't, like, see it at the time, and I couldn't see it just now, either. Huh. Maybe I should have watched this through once in preparation, but I guess I didn't. It's like, it's a balance between, like, if I watch something through... Oh, guess I should talk about the death fight. I mean, there's not much to say. I'm kind of not any better at this fight on Alucard as I am on John. This fight was like consistently stumping me. It's the kind of fight where like successfully no damaging it involves like very like particular timing on like jumping and throwing your axe to intercept the projectiles, and so it's very easy to go into the fight knowing what you're supposed to do and then fucking it up anyway, and that's basically what happened to me like every single time. So that's pretty frustrating, but oh well. This is one combat situation actually where I did this is the other combat situation that I found for the super jump. And it's actually a big relief because I'm terrible at the timing for jumping over that tail swipe. And because Alucard does less damage than John, I have to dodge 2 of those. So the fact that I have access to the super jump as like a nuclear option for avoiding that attack is really nice. And it is, like I said, the only other combat use of the jump that I ever found besides avoiding the Clockwork Golem's attacks in level 4. As if there's any other Clockwork Golem. Well, I guess you do technically fight the Clockwork Golem twice, but whatever. Here, this fight right here is honestly one of the biggest consequences of Eric's lesser damage. It means that every time I clear one of these cycles, she takes less damage than she would have taken if I was doing it on John. And the consequence of that is that I think I have to go through a whole, like, 2 more cycles on Eric. And they're late cycles too, so it's like 5 hits and then like 6 hits. So as much as I love Bloodlines, this boss fight, like, I mean, I get it on paper, but the way it plays out is very, very boring. Like, this boss could be half as long as it is, and I don't think the game would be any worse off for it. Like, once you get to like the 6-hit combo attack, this one right here, the fight should basically just be over. That's my opinion anyway. Okay, it's not 5 and 6, it's 4 and 5. Okay. I hope my complaints made sense. I'm basically saying this fight takes longer on Eric. And it doesn't... It's not really any easier. Like, it's not... The movement, like, what I'm doing to clear this is just as doable on John. It's just jump and attack on a certain timing, and it's like... Wait for her to teleport, wait until she teleports in, because that means she's committed to a spot, and then jump and attack, and then you'll just hit her, and then do that fucking 25 times, and then the boss fight's over. I don't know. Very, very wise of them to extract the one good music track from Super Castlevania 4 and put it in this game. It's a shame you don't get to listen to it for longer, though. Well, I mean, I guess I could stand here and listen to it for as long as I wanted, but I feel like you barely get to hear this really, really cool arrangement of Simon's theme, which is unfortunate. So, Dracula, once again, like, I didn't find myself playing this any differently than I did on John. It's just jump and then attack to intercept his fireballs, but just like with the Medusa fight, it just takes longer. Like, I feel like Eric has given me no extra tools to make this Dracula fight any easier. Whether I attack him from further away or closer doesn't really make a difference, because my strategy is to intercept his fireballs, not dodge them. And in fact, if I get any further away from him, then that might give the fireballs time to, like, fan out and not get intercepted by my attack. So, I don't know. Maybe there is some, like, secret, like, Alucard-only tech for this phase that makes it way easier, but I just don't know about it. But I just don't know about it, and it was never apparent to me. And again, like, even with this phase, I guess it's nice to be able to just stand here and attack and not have to worry about, like, axe travel time and trajectory, but wow, okay, that was really close. Was I planning on doing that? I probably was, but I feel like I didn't... I feel like I could have set that up further in advance. I don't know. What's nice about this phase, though, is that the magician's, like, movements are relatively consistent. Like, I don't think he moves in exactly the same place every time, but he always seems to, like, go low and around the same... Like, for, like, his His like fourth or fifth movement always seems to be him going low. This is the most egregious example, in my opinion, of Alucard's longer range being completely like invalidated, because what I can do here on John is I can jump and I can whip diagonally to put him in the corner. With Eric, I have to either jump and then forward attack and hope I like clip him and he zooms down low enough, or stay on the floor and do an upward diagonal stab, which can also be tricky. Or what I'm doing in this footage is just using the axe. With John, I can just jump and upward diagonal whip, and I know I'll hit him every time. So I don't know. It's another question. It's another situation where I find myself asking, like, is there something I'm missing? Is there something about Alucard that, like, does make this easier and I'm just not doing it? Or is this Alucard not excelling at what he's supposed to excel at, which is, like, more versatile reach? I don't know. It might just be that that, like, John's attacks come to me more naturally because he just has basic Castlevania, attack, like, styles and attack parameters, and I'm just, like, not... I just don't instinctively take advantage of the extra tools that Eric gives me, but my impression from my experience with the game is that Eric doesn't really have, like... The extra angles of attacks that he has are not always actually, like, better than what John has. Which, if the whole balancing factor of him having less damage is supposed to be that he's supposed to have more versatile range, or like longer range, or like better reach, then if he doesn't have that in certain really important boss fight situations, then it's like, well, now he's just a worse version of John. That's kind of why I don't like playing as him as much, even though I do think that his extra movement options are pretty interesting. Fun fact, by the way, about Eric Alucard is that they butched him up for the US and European releases of Bloodlines. In the Japanese versions of Bloodlines, he's like a total, like, pretty boy. He looks like a woman. But then, when they had to market it in America, they were like, we don't want this weird fucking gay-looking character to be in our game. Let's make him look more grizzled. See, that was back before people realized that you could put, like, anime girly men in your video games and nobody would care. Or you could put girly anime men in your video games and you would get access to the lucrative female gamer market. But that was back when, I think, there was an understanding that video games were for, like, 10-year-old boys, and they didn't want to put anything, like, too girly or too gay looking in any of their marketing. In the West, anyway. Japan obviously is not like that. Anyway, I seem to have come to the end of the playthrough. Yeah, that's Castlevania Bloodlines. That's Eric Alucard. Like I said, like I kind of worked through in this commentary, my feelings about the character and how the character plays are mixed. I think there's definitely a really high skill ceiling for Eric and for taking advantage of all of the extra, like, what he does offer you. But I'm kind of caught between, like, yes, his extra movement is interesting, but his underwhelming combat combined with the way that a lot of the boss fights are designed in Bloodlines makes him feel not as good to play. Like I said, it feels at times like you're just playing a weaker version of John. I don't know. Maybe that's my issue. Not being creative enough, but that's how it feels to me. Which is why I prefer to play as John, even though Eric clears the game faster and is probably in some ways like a better character from a pure, like, power gaming standpoint. More options, longer reach, etc., etc. Anyway, that's Castlevania Bloodlines. I'm not even close to done. Next videos coming out are going to be about a very, very special game, which is actually, and the game that I'm going to talk about next is actually the whole reason I'm doing this in the first place. If you're one of the 30 people who watched my old videos, you might know what this is. If not, just keep your eyes peeled and it'll be a pleasant surprise. And in the meantime, hang in there, stay safe, look after your pets, and keep on Earth rocking. I am Master of the Vampire Killer. Well, good for me.